Yes, I'm live. I'm up, ready to go. Just sorting through the toys here to figure out what to pull out to guys to kind of kick things off. So, what's it like where you guys are at? We're just kind of everything shut down here in New York. I guess it's a good time to be painting and working on hobby stuff. Yeah, lockdown. There's one gaming store in the area which, if you call them ahead of time, they can kind of get you some stuff and they'll run out your order to the curb. But in terms of playing, just everything's shut down. Which, I mean, that's important. That's how it's supposed to be. Yeah, the irony being, in terms of paint stuff, all my 40K is almost caught up. I just finished up a Demon Prince. Let me grab him. My Battletech's done. This was the guy I just finished for my Cornate Army. It's one of the older kits. So in the meantime, it's just trying to figure out how we're just going to keep gaming and keep that hobby going. I think it'll be a little bit easier for board games and things like that. Hey, what's up, Bruce? And BattleTech, I know we could do Mega Mech, and I've been playing around with some of the hex maps with my buddy Dave just to see, are we gonna, like, I don't know, maybe play BattleTech over video. Certainly, we have enough mechs and enough toys to do that. Hey, Gaddis, that's what I'm wondering myself. Where certainly, I know, what is it, Tabletop Simulator, and other ways to play, and that works. And I know a lot of friends of mine that do that. But for me, the wargaming, of course, the social interaction, but also interacting with the physical pieces, pushing the pieces around, and being able to pick them up and navigate them. That was so much of the hobby. But we're just going to have to adapt a little bit. Just pulling out some mechs here. I'm curious to see, could you play a quick war game through just over video? Just kind of set things up, and especially if it's something like BattleTech, where if you have a similar hex map to the person you're playing with, they have those coordinates printed on it. You could figure out where your mechs are moving and what you're doing. I think it would have to be a lower battle value game, which kind of goes against most BattleTech games that we play are 6, 7, 8,000 K. Maybe we could do it with 2,000. Yeah, painting miniatures. I was just saying a moment ago, I'm in a good place. I'm all caught up. Historicals, I'm caught up on. 40K, BattleTech. Could start cracking open some of the board games. Work my way through Zombicide Invader here in the back. But I'm a little bit intimidated after painting my way through Black Plague. I'm not quite sure if I'm ready to do Invader. So my first D&D experience was playing with my cousin Eric. He came over, and he had D&D. I think it was the D&D Red Box. And I didn't really understand, of course, how to play it, because he was kind of both the DM and playing a character. So naturally, he favored his character. He played an elf. And that was kind of the first experience with a role-playing game where the action's happening in your mind, and you're kind of drawing maps, and you have this character, this avatar on the table that represents you. And I found that very intriguing. Later on, picking up some of the rule books and making my way through and playing, the first real D&D experience was with some friends, and this kind of pushed into Warhammer 40K, where we were painting miniatures to play. And at the end, this was the beginning of the summer. At the end of the summer, we were going to face Tiamat. So I was going to take the party through however many adventures until the end of the summer, and then have this giant showdown. And at the end of the summer, we were ready to go. We had a Tiamat model that we sculpted out of clay. We had a dungeon made out of cardboard and painted. And we were picking up some final miniatures, and we went to the hobby store, this store, Dragon's Den. And my buddy Naps was looking, and he's like, "Hey, Fritz, check this out. Orcs with guns." And I'm like, what do you mean orcs with guns? Orcs, first of all, they can't have guns, and that just makes no sense. And we're looking at the orc pirates from 40K Rogue Trader. We were looking at the Imperial Army figures, and right away after seeing Space Marines, even back then GW had the secret sauce down. Seeing Space Marines, we were absolutely sold, and that kind of pushed into 40K, which only fueled more D&D miniatures to purchase. But my first experience with D&D was the D&D Red Box, and then I think like most people at the time, moving into AD&D. I don't think there were many people moving from AD&D to the Red Box, but I could be wrong. Oh, I'd love to get one of your care packages, Gaddis. I mean, I'm ready to paint. I'm sitting here ready to go. I have zero excuse. I have nothing to distract myself from that, and I'm really intrigued to explore some new things. I know someone posted they were working on AdMech. That's always tempting. That's an army that I'm surprised Games Workshop just like Space Marines are a license to print money. Why it took Games Workshop so many years to push out AdMech. I mean, maybe there was something with Forge World where Forge World was kind of really pushing those pieces out, some of the bigger pieces. But I know it's a fantastic army, especially in Kill Team. Pull out some more mechs here. I got to get these guys organized, get them up. I like all the AdMech vehicles. I think what's amazed me most about Games Workshop was a number of years ago. So maybe I don't know, was this the end of fifth edition, early sixth, where they were introducing super heavies because it was my understanding at the time that if you wanted to pull in those super heavies, you had to use Apocalypse or kind of Forge World approved rules. So you weren't going to see them in tournaments, and they were really kind of special kits. And then with Games Workshop introducing flyers and some of the bigger tanks, they I think they literally expanded the battlefield to the point where now it wasn't squad versus squad or smaller company infantry with some support tanks. Now it was almost this idea of total warfare. And I think right now the rules for flyers and stuff, it's a good balance. I think if they get really complex and detailed, like some wargaming systems, it's just going to bog down. But if you make it so simplified, like it was in fifth, where essentially they're just vehicles hovering in the air and not really moving, then that kind of kills it a little bit also. But I think it's the big question is, I mean, we've got Primarchs, you got Titans, baby Titans, super heavies, vehicles. What's going to be that next in 40K? What's going to be that next big model kind of jumping in and pushing it out there now that everyone has a little bit of everything? Dark Souls the board game or Dark Souls on video? Or is there a difference? I am here. Up here is I'll turn this up. We got the Dark Souls. I actually really like the game. I didn't get involved on the Kickstarter, and I had missed that. So now I'm kind of in that interesting spot where Steamforged is releasing the character kits, some of the mega bosses that are out there, but I'm not saying they're. I mean, they are certainly very nice pieces and they're very engaging, but like $50 a pop for Mega Boss, I got to wait it out. I got to ride it out a little bit. But I am interested in the character pack, and by no means just having the Darkroot expansion and some of the common Mega Bosses right now there's still massive replayability with that. So I'm still grinding my way through Dark Souls, and for what it is, I like the game. I mean, I know there's a grind factor in the board game, and there's challenges where you're playing a character, you might not get the gear you want, or if you draw a tough room with some of the sentinels early on, you're kind of roadblocked. But that's it. It is what it is. And Kickstarters, what do you guys think about Kickstarters? I mean, now with all the supply chains kind of being backed up, and some of the big Kickstarters waiting out there to complete, I think it's actually a good time for Kickstarter because I think there's less noise out there. So if you're looking to launch a Kickstarter or get involved in the Kickstarter, I think this pause from some of the bigger companies is really good. I think it's more in the spirit of what Kickstarter was intended, to try and help smaller publishers or smaller groups. Yeah, solo Dark Souls for solo, I think is great. If you have a place you can leave it set up, grind a room or make your way through. The couple of times I played it with my friends, and two of them are Dark Soul enthusiasts, so the IP was perfect for them. The IP was right there. The challenge for them was the grind, almost where they were moving ahead faster than the other people playing, trying to tactically analyze it. Yeah, the BattleTech Kickstarter Wave One. I'm doing my best just not really to follow it because I expect delays. Not because it's Catalyst or anything like that. I think they're actually handling it fantastically, given the scope. I almost think that they overpromised where they had all these models and renders ready to go. And it seemed like as the Kickstarter was evolving, they're throwing more out there, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, we just want massive amounts of mechs that are out there. But even before what's going on in the world with delays and everything, I just can't see them fulfilling it anytime soon. But how long have we been waiting for new BattleTech sculpts? How long have we been waiting? I think it's going to be the golden age. So I think they're doing a fantastic job. I like a lot of the old sculpts. I'm going to pull out a few here. The thing that I found kind of most inconsistent in my mind, and maybe I'm wrong, was let's pull out the Stalker here just for scale. Line it up on the hex and put up a Battle Master. Then put up, I'm looking something for scale here. Here's so that scale seems kind of okay. The Battlemaster and the Stalker, I always thought the Stalker looked a little light or a little bit smaller compared to some of the other heavy and assault mechs. I think the Stinger model is kind of dead on. It's thin, it's light, it's a light mech. I understand that the Stalker's crouching a little bit, but I always expected it to have a little more beef in line with the Battlemaster right there. So it's and then you have stuff like the Grasshopper, and it might just be my imagination, but I always thought the Grasshopper would have a little bit more physical bulk just with how it looks. So that's kind of been a pet peeve with some of the metal sculpts, the early ones. I just expected some of the mechs to be a little bigger. Maybe not, but certainly the details. We got the Ost series here, the Unseen, the Reseen Unseen. I think these sculpts are really good. I've been happy with them, with how they look. Yeah, Gaddis, if you're doing everything in America, I think that's great for a lot of reasons, but just from the perspective of project management, I can't even begin to on a perfect day just try to logistically interface with China or overseas publishing, just with the time barrier and maybe the culture barrier, just to be able to do everything in America. I think that alone is great because it'll facilitate a Kickstarter much quicker. What I wonder about BattleTech, and it's a little bit of a bias, having played it for so long and having played it kind of in the beginning, is there's never been able to the Mech Warrior video game series on the old PC, on Xbox, the current iteration of it. You have this amazing IP, in my opinion, of capturing BattleTech in a video digital format and making that transition to analog. I think that's what they tried to do with Alpha Strike. Making that transition, we've never been able to be able to pull in the video game players. Now, you could argue in the past that's because if you got into BattleTech, it was either, if you didn't know anybody, it was either you somehow tracked down one of the obscure starter sets, or if you did make yourself to Iron Win medals, which I love, where do you really begin? I mean, there's no starter pack, there's no introduction. There was never a good way to cross over, in my mind, into the digital to analog version of BattleTech. I think Catalyst has kind of solved that just with the new Game of Armored Combat set, with how they're promoting it, refreshing, updating the looks of it all. I mean, that's fantastic. Grey Knight's Psychic Awakening. My Knights are kind of on hold. I had them down here. I don't know what direction to really take with them. I've been playing mostly Necrons and Tyranids right now. Can I even dare say I've been taking a slight break from Chaos? That's just playing my corn build for Chaos, getting a little burnt out on that. Grey Knights, I think they need that psychic boost, and I think they should. I'm hoping that, I've always hoped that Grey Knights could evolve to be Space Marines. Evolve to be Space Marines that, well, the real heresy here, that maybe play like Eldar, where you have some more finesse psychic abilities, manifesting in there, rather than, I sometimes feel like, from my perspective, who's played Grey Knights for a long time, they're just another Space Marine chapter. And I'm not saying they're supposed to be super elite, but at least be extremely specialized from that perspective. So that's what I'd like to see. But Games Workshop, it seems, over the various incarnations of it, you get to the point where the power armor, as soon as you start adding on anything to power armor, the eliteness of the army tends to go up, and then you're susceptible to, since it's a D6 system in my mind, rolling D6s, even with other mechanics like D6 plus a D3 or exploding dice. I mean, there's different ways to do it, but you're limited on that power armor chassis, and it just seems like Grey Knights have never been able to correct that. But I love the army; it's fantastic with it. Well, like I had Cadians a number of years ago. Um, I think that's some interesting diversity, because more so than the Space Marine chapters, or perhaps as much as the Space Marine chapters, it's always been, the Imperial Guard has always been very distinct, right? All these different, whether it's Cadia or Iron Guard, or you're looking at Death Corps, things like that. There's always been tremendous opportunity to really diversify and have some amazing Imperial jungle fighters, Imperial Guard armies. But is it something internal with GW? I wonder. Do they see just who's really going to buy all these miniatures, especially if it's a guard army and you've got to bulk up on all these kits? We've just never really seen the diversity outside of the really big fanboys that love a certain type of army. Same could be said about Dark Angel players, right? To justify that. But if GW moves to a print on demand, I know they do that occasionally, but I'd love to see more Imperial Guard armies. Has Psychic Awakenings buffed them tremendously? I mean, I will absolutely look into that more. I guess I keep on holding on to the Tyranid Dream for some reason. I'd say for ninth edition, I mean, we talked about this, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago on one of my vlogs. The idea that Games Workshop, it does have a good system behind it, and it's evolved. Now, whether you want to argue it's competitive or it's more beer and pretzels, I mean, we could go both ways. But I just can't see them totally destroying that system like Age of Sigmar, or rebooting the rules alone. But at the same time, I could argue that and say the model line itself is so strong, and the presence of Space Marines and everything is so strong. If GW rebooted it and rebooted the rules for ninth, I mean, would we play? Would you guys play it? I'm just wondering what's going to be the next big thing they introduce for 40K. In previous editions, it was like the introduction of flyers, changing them into true flyers. Then we saw super heavies. Now, I mean, effectively, you have Titans on the table, Titans in the game. We've got Primarchs. So what would be that next for ninth? So does ninth make that jump to something new, add something new, or is it a continue refinement of the rule set system? Is it more like a D&D 3.0 going to 3.5? Yeah, true Dark Mechanicus. I think a lot of people would be happy for that, but one could argue you could just kind of kit bash Mechanicus and make it Dark Mechanicus now. If I had a wish list for 40K, I'd like to see it do something. Um, I'd like to find a way to break up the you go I go system, especially as we toss down more toys. But I'd like to see something. I'd like to see something kind of like they do with Chain of Command, which is a historical system, historical war game. And in Chain of Command, the game starts where you put down these markers, these tokens on the table. And there's ways to manipulate the tokens and move them around. That's not really important in the moment. But the idea is there's these jump off points on the table. So if I put one of my tokens, say, behind a building, you as a tabletop general know that there's stuff behind that building. So when I bring units on, through activation dice, I can choose to bring on an infantry squad behind that building, a tank, maybe a support platoon with a machine gun. So the idea is, as you as a tabletop commander, you see that, okay, I've got a jump off point behind this building, but what's really hiding behind there? Is it armor? Is it infantry? And when you get into range, the jump off point closes down if I don't have any units there to simulate that you've cleared it. What I've always wished for 40K is more hidden units, more ways to kind of hide what's on the table, to simulate that battlefield fog of war. I don't know if that could really be done given the scale of 40K, and I don't know if it's that type of game, or if it's a more cinematic play where you're putting down a lot of models and you're blowing stuff up. I don't think GW can move away from a D6 system. And again, would they want to? I mean, would you innovate with custom dice like X-wing miniatures and just have custom success dice for the various factions? Would you change it to D10 percentile? But I think we'd lose people. I think you'd lose people, but maybe the models would sell well enough that it kind of becomes redundant. What has surprised me, I don't know anyone that plays Necromunda, and that's probably a good thing, because then I would definitely get involved playing that. Just not so much because it's Mordheim in space, but I'm intrigued by the narrative and the possibility of the terrain, and kind of the terrain how it looks. That really that's interesting to fight in a hive world. But for a while, everyone was playing Kill Team and various smaller games of 40k, and that kind of dried up. So I don't know if it's a system thing or if it's just how things kind of worked out. But it's hard to get that smaller Kill Team game of 40k. Everyone's kind of go much bigger games, and not even Apocalypse games. Apocalypse here is kind of fizzled out also. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you could take this is real heresy. We've taken some 40k models, Eldar, Imperial Guard, Space Marines, and just literally sync them over to Chain of Command and played them that way. And it was a lot of fun visually, and it made the tactics in my mind a lot more. Well, I won't say more realistic because it is tabletop, but a lot more interesting. Yeah, no, my friend Mike Cho, he's a great painter. Years ago, he's Golden Demon and just fantastic freehand. He has like a whole Space Marine army. He has tons and tons of models, and if we can get him to play 2 or 3 times a year, that's good, and that's okay. But his whole 40k Games Workshop is essentially painting and collecting. So I wonder how many people in the hobby just purely paint and build versus people that just play. I don't want to say unpainted models, but kind of those players that have eternally unpainted models. Is anybody making their way through Blackstone Fortress? That's the question. So I don't want to give away any Blackstone Fortress um, secrets or spoilers, but for me, it's been fantastic because from that board gaming perspective, it's been a great way to explore the 40k narrative, the 40k universe, uh, from just kind of a sci-fi board game perspective. And I don't think there's many sci-fi board games out there that do it really well. I think Space Hulk was probably the go-to from before. But the ability to play Warhammer Quest and have kind of a legacy game and see it evolve, that's I've been really enjoying that. And the way Games Workshop has been supporting it and pushing it out, although you could argue the recent release with the Plague Marines is kind of a soft money grab because that kit's been out for a while, but we're getting a Zote as the counter. I hope they just keep pushing that stuff out for a long time because it's a great way to play 40k. And apparently, it's turning out to be those of us that thought it would be less expensive than regular 40k. That's not even true. Yeah, Space Hulk expansion. So okay, I get the whole chaos thing because Games Workshop is chaos, and you've got chaos Space Marines and more chaos Space Marines and cultists. That's good. We got the Amble. We'll get the Zote. I'd love to see Necrons. I'd love to see Necrons in there. I mean, that's sold no matter what it is. I'd love to play like a Necron Lord. And I'm kind of surprised that Tyranids haven't happened in yet. Although I'm sure that'll evolve as they push things out. Well, it's interesting what also I've seen with 40k, and by recent maybe the past couple of years, you used to see a lot, or at least I shouldn't say you. I used to see a lot more kit bash or homebrew armies, not necessarily custom armies like turning orcs into Imperial Guard, but you would see the old GW rule. I don't know if it was like 50% of the model has to be Games Workshop, but you'd see stuff like an Imperial Guard army with Cadian bodies, but head swaps from another model line. Is it Cromlech or something like that across the entire army? Like hundreds of heads. Or you'd see bringing in like steampunk tanks into Imperial Guard armies. You'd see maybe like 30, 40, 50% of the army from other model sources. Extremely well done. I mean, fantastic, seamless. But I don't see many armies like that anymore. I just really see straight up GW armies. And myself, I've always run straight up GW model armies simply because I don't have the artistic talent for that big a conversion or kit bashing back and forth. Most of my conversions, they wouldn't even be called conversions. There's some Forge World shoulder pads or a couple of different head swaps from some different model lines, but mostly straight up 40K. I've done my best to resist Age of Sigmar so far. I love the Cornate models, and I've been tempted to just start picking stuff up, but Sigmar just isn't, it's not really, the community around here isn't really supported enough that I think it's self-sustaining. It still has that feel very much of Warhammer Fantasy. You kind of know some people play it. You could kind of get involved in playing it, but do you really want to go through and paint all those models and play it, maybe once a month? So I mean, I'd be curious, Age of Sigmar, where you guys are, is that a stronger part of the community? Yeah, War Machine. I mean, occasionally I'd see some people playing War Machine. I'm trying to think of the other title. There's another game activated by cards. Was it Weird Miniatures? The models look fantastic. They're kind of small war bands. I'm totally spacing on the name. I've played it a few times with some friends that have pieces they've lent me. No, I've never picked up War Machine. And Age of Sigmar, I would imagine it is better than launch. Just with how Games Workshop is supporting it and what they're putting out. I think the biggest appeal for Age of Sigmar for me would be there's zero legacy models. I mean, I know you could pull out your old Warhammer Fantasy models, but they've literally revamped everything. And 40K's gotten better. They've revamped a lot, but I think there's a couple of still legacy kits and legacy models out there, like the Khorne Berserkers, that they're okay. They hold up okay, but they're not. They're certainly not in line with what GW can do now and push now. Malifaux or Malifax, Malifaux, yes. Um, I liked the rule system a lot for Malifaux. I think I'm saying it correctly. Yeah, Infinity. I don't know anyone that plays Infinity around here. I think skirmish games are a little bit deceptive because you're like, I only need a war band or I only need X number of models. And then next thing you need another war band to play with your buddies and maybe another one to counter that. And what if you have a 4-player game and then you're looking at enough pieces to have such a big army? But I guess that's part of the secret sauce to sell it. Kickstarters, I'm kind of upset's not the right word. I'm sorry that I missed Nemesis. I saw it. I didn't quite jump in on it. I kind of had some feeling that it was going to be slow to retail. The Kickstarter exclusives looks fantastic. But I think what pushed me off a little bit was the complexity of the cat and mouse dance of it. And now seeing some of the plays and seeing some of the things, I kind of regret that because I think it's a fantastic game for what it does. So that Kickstarter, that was unfortunate missing that. And I don't think they'll do a 2.0 or kind of release it again. Maybe we'll get the Wave 1 or the base game out there in public. I played Judge Dredd miniatures. We've got looking up those guys up on my gaming shelf there. That's probably the most obscure system that I played, just being a Dredd fanboy, from collecting those comics and Punisher from back in the day. But that's a great example of a game system that I love. And I mean, the miniatures are quirky, but honestly, if I play it twice a year, it's something like I'll set up at the club and we'll play, but it doesn't happen enough to really justify what I've put into it. I'm guessing most of you guys there are BattleTech and 40K. Does anybody play Wings of Glory? I really like Wings of Glory is a game that I need to play more of. Just absolutely, just on how elegant the system is, and that it's World War One planes. They have World War Two, but I think that's an approachable war game that anyone can sit and play. D&D Edition Wars. I mean, I've publicly said I enjoy playing D&D 4.0 for what it does is kind of a quick play MMO tabletop. I think it works. I think if we got the digital tools that were promised, the whole idea was to streamline it as an MMO and make it playable there. And then you'd have the wizard supported tools where you could go on and play with your friends, virtual tabletop. If they delivered that, would that have been the knockout blow? And we wouldn't be playing D&D 5.0 right now. I think 5.0 works. I think it's the most approachable system. I mean, there's the usual D&D bloat, much easier, in my opinion, than 3.5. I was looking through some of my 3.5 books the other day, and we played that for years. But just with the skill checks, constantly making these skill checks when you got to like level 10 or 11 or 12, my sorcerer is trying to bluff, and based on my charisma bonus and a few charisma bonus magic items before I even roll a d20, I'm at like, bluff or intimidate plus 25. I'm going to blast through any DC level the DM can throw at me. So I think it was a little bit out of balance there. Yeah, the Wings of Glory, World War One, World War Two, whichever your time period, what that system does the best, in my opinion, is it engages all the players. It's not even a you go, I go system. It's we put out our planes, and you have a deck of cards that has the maneuverability of each plane. If it goes straight, if it can bank right, bank left, kind of stall a little bit, and you look through your cards and you program them in this dashboard. Everyone lays out their cards at the same time. And after everyone's done that, you all move at the same time. So it's like everybody reveal first card, put it down, and then move it forward. It's and you guys can kind of correct me. In my understanding, that's the only war game where everybody does everything at the same time. So everybody's moving all their planes at the same time. And then to shoot, much like X-Wing miniatures, because that was built on the system, you put down the measuring sticks, you draw cards for damage. It's a great game that scales up, where we've had 10, 11, 12 people on each side, all flying planes. And there's no downtime. There's no one group hanging out while someone else does something. I mean, I think that's a very fantastic system that could play quick with the base rules, or if you want to scale it up with altitude and special damage and pilot ability, if you want to go in that direction, it works. Yeah, and Chain of Command, I'm a big fan of Chain of Command, just on the activation, the fact that you have hidden units, the fact that you can have off-table support. The only thing that's interesting with Chain of Command, which even playing it now for maybe 4 years, is that you're not like Space Marines. You're not genetically engineered soldiers. So we played Chain of Command World War II, and Chain of Command Spanish Civil War, where even World War II, where you have senior officers on the table that can issue orders, if your unit starts taking fire, you take shock tokens and you get pinned. And as you take these shock tokens, the it represents you fire less, you move less, eventually become pinned, eventually you'll break. So it's an interesting experience playing Chain of Command where the units on the table don't always act how you want them to act, and you have to be mindful of just how much damage you're taking. Where not even playing my Cornate Berserkers, just playing Space Marines running across the table, and losing some along the way, I'm not worried about that. So it's completely different narrative, and it took a long time to realize. I remember one of the first games playing. I sent one of my teams up on a hill, and at the top of the hill was a building. I think it was a farm, and there was a machine gun team in there. And I started taking hits on the hill, and I get pinned, and I'm taking shock, and I'm issuing orders from my senior officer to remove shock and get up and fire back. Nobody's listening to me. Then I realized, like, these are they're professional soldiers I'm playing on the table, but from my perspective, what an absolute inept commander. I mean, I would be immediately relieved of command and court-martialed for such a stupid move. So playing historicals has been a tremendously different look into that window. Pathfinder adventure card game. Don't have to sell me on that. Rise of the Rune Lords is still my favorite. That might be because that was the first adventure series I played. I do have my buddy has the other series, so I don't have to pick those up. I picked up the core set, redesigned the new core set, but it's been a little bit of a disappointment because the artwork is better, but more is crunched on the card. You've got some tokens to track effects, but I don't even think they're necessary for those effects. Like, they put in poison, they put in paralysis. It just added a little bit of bookkeeping. I understand what they were trying to do, but they seem really slow in rolling out the adventure paths. We've got the smaller box. What is it? Curse of the Crimson Throne. But I would have hoped at this point we would have been on a second or third adventure box. So I don't know if that signals a stall in the series and they're pumping everything into Starfinder and pushing that out. And one could say, why don't we have Starfinder, the adventure card game? I don't know if I'd get into that, but I love Pathfinder for what it is, warts and all. I mean, it's got some flaws. It's random sometimes. Like, why is there a bunyip in the general store? Who knows? Make it up. But it works, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah, Marvel Crisis Protocol. Yes, I mean, there's a lot of people playing that. I see that. I just haven't had a chance to explore that. Yeah, so there's two editions of Pathfinder Adventure card game right now. There's the first edition, which comes in these giant boxes, which is Rise of the Rune Lords. Is it Mummy's Mask? Wrath of the Righteous. And then there's now a new rebooted released core set that is going to be moving forward. And supposedly they're all interchangeable, but the art design and the card design on the back end looks different. So that might kind of bug you out a little bit, or it's not as seamless. The new core set that's been released, it's good. It works. I think overall it's a natural evolution, but I think it's a little bit starved for content right now. That said, I think if you were jumping into it, I would not jump into Rise of the Rune Lords or some of the older sets unless you could get it in a trade used for next to nothing. Because if you find out you like it, they're harder to acquire, and they've kind of moved on. Paizo's kind of moved on to the new core set. But yeah, core set second edition, and I think I got it right here. That's the current core set. It's not the best lighting. And then up there is Rune Lords. So I would jump in. All these boxes here are barely balancing. It'll just be a massive avalanche of stuff. Yeah, it's a big box. Let's see what else we could pull out. What else do you guys want to see? Finally learned how to play Mage Knight in theory. Took like hours of watching videos and kind of figuring it out. Or I should say I'm playing my version of Mage Knight. Put some mechs back out here. No, Dust was I don't know anyone that played it. I don't regret it. I did buy I'm gonna try not to butcher the name. I did buy heavily into Tannhauser. So you've got that whole kind of World War II weird war kind of sci-fi. I really like that idea. I'd love to explore it more because I think World War II is that narrative that we're all familiar with in some capacity, and a lot of crazy things could have happened. So to jump into that sandbox, I think it's a lot of fun. But Dust never kind of played it or continued it. Most unique board game in my collection. That would be that would be we got Magic Realm. Focus in on that. Can't say I really know what the heck I'm doing with Magic Realm either. We got Descent. I mean, Hero Quest from back in the day. I would probably say Kingdom Death Monster up here is probably the most unique system that I own, and certainly with Kingdom Death Monster, I can't even say I've made it halfway through the content. And actually, given the situation of everything that's going on, I've been thinking about starting a Kingdom Death Monster campaign and maybe just live streaming it, just setting it up here on the gaming table and playing a couple of hours every week and kind of get you guys to make some decisions on how we're going to fight and how we're going to build out our settlement. Yeah, I like Tannhauser. I've Ogre. Yeah, I've played Ogre. I enjoy it. I think once you get into the groove of trying to figure out, or I should say, trying to remember the various calculations, whether it's 3-to-1, 2-to-1, 1-to-1 of the armor that you damage. But I think it's a great, I think it's a great war game, all in one box. And I like the fact that it's unbalanced. I mean, even if you're playing multiple ogres, it's this idea of one versus many. So you get to explore it from that perspective. Yeah, Kingdom Death Monster live stream. I mean, that's what I'm thinking. I'm sitting here thinking most of my stuff is painted up, and what would be kind of fun to since I think we're going to be remote for a long time, just set up Kingdom Death Monster Settlement Lantern Year 1, and whoever's on the stream will make the decisions in that moment of who lives and dies and how we're going to play it through. I wonder why, as a wargamer, Steve Jackson never achieved more depth, and maybe that's just because I'm a little bit younger than that target audience, maybe, or maybe not. I mean, I think he had great success with GURPS, and I think other things that he certainly supported and pushed out for a long time. But wargaming, maybe just because it was too early on. But I think Ogre was and is still is a great system, especially the designer edition. I like the idea of the designer edition with or even the re-released edition that pulls in some of the models from the designer edition where they're the cardboard form fit models. I think that's a good kind of halfway between having miniatures versus plastic. Yeah, we had a lot of fun with GURPS when we came off of a D&D campaign and we were looking for something new to kind of play. And at first it was confusing because myself and a bunch of friends, we're in that D&D mindset where excuse me, your character has to have a class and it has to have a specialization. Playing GURPS where there was no character class, it's skill sets, it's the quirks, it's all that type of stuff. First we had to break through that and just wrap our head around that, where you were a character of skills. And then we had to wrap around the fact that we just had the core GURPS set. We didn't have any of the campaign worlds. So the idea was like, what are we going to play? What are we going to do? And I ran a GURPS adventure where with four people, they were corrupt FBI agents. So the idea was just how corrupt and how fast could you go and not get caught. And the irony being, many, many years later, one of them went to the academy and became an FBI agent, and now he's in the DEA. So I don't know if that influenced him in any way, but I thought it was a great system. Yeah, Steve Jackson, they have released the Ogre miniatures proper, haven't they? I don't know if that was through Area 51 workshop or pushing that out. I mean, that's interesting because that takes the game to a whole new tactical level, which actual 3D miniatures, which I'm always a big fan of. Ogre Tank 350 on eBay. I mean, if you're into wargaming, you totally understand that, and that's justified. Can never publicly admit how much half the stuff costs. Before Dark Heresy, I mean, we played a lot of Dark Heresy. We had a lot of fun with Dark Heresy, but before Dark Heresy, what was the system? It used the 40K. It used a bigger scale of 40K miniatures. I'm trying to think what that system was called. We tried that a little bit. Rarest miniature I own. I'll get him out for the next stream because he's buried in the back. It is the Farseer model, Games Workshop Eldar Farseer model, that has that bug helmet. And I think he's from like 1991. That's been a main piece in my Eldar army. Second to that is probably my Necron Lord from when Necrons were Necron Raiders. And it was just basically like the destroyers. And if you blew up the destroyer, he hopped off and he was a Necron warrior. The warriors and the scarabs, there was this kind of Egyptian looking Necron Lord. He kind of had the Egyptian hat and the staff with the Ankh on it. And that, I love that model. I still play that model. This day is my Lord in my Necron army. Those are probably the two rarest models that I own. Just trying to think. Yeah, that would be my vote. But I think we all have our favorite miniatures. I mean, for me, the playing a war game as opposed to say something that's digital, or I should say a miniature war game, because certainly played a lot of Avalon Hill and things like that. Besides the interaction of the pieces, of you physically moving them around and looking and interacting, for me it's always been about, through the years, looking at some of these pieces and thinking about the battles that I've had, the fun times with friends, the wins, the losses. I mean, it almost becomes, when you're unpacking your miniatures, this living history with some models. And I mean, maybe that's reading too much into it, but some of my armies, I can literally see defeat, see victory, experience, live it again. You know, maybe it's like pulling out your old D&D character sheets and kind of looking through and playing with that, playing with your miniatures, playing with your stuff. Just looping back around in terms of like remote gaming, virtual gaming, streaming gaming. I mean, do you guys have any plans for that? I mean, because it's certainly good to build and paint, but we've got to get some gaming on. And I think even unfortunately at this point, even some of my friends, even if we were going to do like one to one, face to face, just not even being in a crowd or a group, I just think we can't even risk that if we had some capacity to do that. So I'm definitely interested. That's what I wanted to do a little bit more with the live streaming here, was kind of maybe put together a schedule where it's like, maybe Wednesday we'll play something and make some group decisions on what to do, or work through some tactical scenarios, just to get some dice rolling somewhere, to try and play that out, to try to see that out. And then of course, a lot of friends of mine, in various Facebook groups, I think there's going to be a renaissance of role playing games and D&D games, which maybe port over a little bit easier. Even if you're just doing a streaming video, interacting, or something like Skype or Google Hangouts, where you can go back and forth, and you have your character sheets and you have your dice. All the D&D groups in the area here have they've all moved online. They've all taken their campaigns online. They're starting new campaigns. So I wonder if this is going to be like a renaissance of D&D, because it just ports over so easy. Yeah, competitive 40K. Um, it's I think, I don't want to say like 40K career, but maybe 40K evolution. When I started playing a little bit more competitively, that's when I was able to take and make a tremendous jump, because early on, or most of my 40K at the time, was basement battle reports, playing with friends, playing a little fast and loose if things were over the list, or you wanted to throw down a model with some different rules at the time. Let's do it. Of course, we're trying to win, but and most of the games at the club, Battle for Salvation, were narrative, and they were kind of playing that. And then something shifted, and we started going to a lot of tournaments. Brother Grimm went out there to Long Island, Toy Wiz across the bridge in Rockland. And what was interesting, what I noticed was, uh, whatever group you play in, no matter how big or how small, there's like this group consciousness. You tend to kind of gravitate towards a certain play style, because you're there with other players that become your friends, and that kind of becomes the norm. And that's great, because you know each other and you can joke around. But when I made that jump to playing competitively, going to tournaments, just small Rogue Trader tournaments, nothing massive. Now I was playing armies that I knew, playing against Space Marines, Tyranids, whatever, but people that had a different player personality, groups that had different ways of playing the game. And that was really good, because it forced me in the moment to adapt. Often not successful. I wouldn't have a good run. I'd go home, I'd think things over, I'd kind of ask questions on what I did right or wrong. But I think in that moment, playing competitively, being forced to constantly adjust in the moment, that really helped focus my 40K consciousness of playing. And over the years, I played competitively. I backed away and said I'm done. Then I come back. I back away. I'm done. I don't think it's good to exist competitive play full time, or have that be your only source of hobby. But again, there's lots of ways to enjoy 40K. There's a lot of players out there that that is their bread and butter, that is their mainstay, and that's good. But I've always suggested and said, hey, if you're 100% a narrative player and you love 40K from that way, just do one tournament. Just do a small tournament, local tournament, hobby tournament, and get that exposure against opponents with a little bit of pressure, a little bit of pressure playing on the clock, and see how that works out. I think it's great. Yeah, Google Hangouts, Zoom, RPG gaming. I think just RPG gaming is going to take off. Yeah, that's my biggest concern, the social aspect. Because certainly I love the collecting and most of the time the building and painting. But for me, it's just like, let's set up a table, let's roll some dice, let's try and do something crazy, let's blow some stuff up, and I look forward to that part of the week where we can get together and physically play on the tabletop. So now that's kind of on hold for a little bit, and that's okay. We'll find things to do. Oh, Lord of the Rings living card game, yes. I don't know. That's love hate. That's. I got involved way too late, maybe halfway through. Um, Mines of Moria cycle. I mean, it was well established, and I think it's a fantastic system. I think the deck building aspect, where you figure out what adventure path you want to play, and then you spend maybe 30, 40 minutes crafting your deck, stacking it with Gandalf and other things before you even get to play the game. There's a game to play. And early on, I didn't appreciate that as part of the game. I wanted to just jump in and play it. So my decks, of course, were naturally super weak, got totally trashed, totally destroyed. Stepped away for a bit and realized I had never played a living card game before. So I didn't realize that's the way to evolve it and play it. But as soon as I learned that, where that's part of the enjoyment is building your deck with whatever resources you have, whether you have a lot of cards or not, then jumping into the various adventures and cycles was fantastic. But I think the artwork is fantastic. The rules are fantastic. The learning curve is there, but it's not that bad. The challenge, though, of course, is because it's so massive. There's a lot of the smaller cycle packs that just I will never be able to purchase because they're way too expensive. They're probably never going to get a reprint. So I don't know if I was jumping into Lord of the Rings now, if I would do that. But I think it's a great solo game. It's a great game just to sit out and play, especially if you love Lord of the Rings. I played it maybe with a friend once or twice, so I don't feel like I've missed out playing it solo. I think Arkham, the card game by Fantasy Flight, is awesome. But I think if you're thinking about jumping into that, you're at that point where now if you jump into Arkham, there's enough stuff out there. It's expanded tremendously being a living card game, but you could still get in. If you really love it, you could still pick things up gradually over a couple of months and build up your collection. But in another year, will that game system be so massive and so out of print? If you haven't been following it from day one, I don't really know what'll happen. Call of Cthulhu. In what way? Like role playing games? I've done Arkham Horror. I still love playing it, mainly with the small expansions. The biggest thing that I liked about Arkham Horror was outside of 40K. Yeah, fighting the old ones and ancient gods is fun, but I love the idea of utilizing magic in Arkham Horror, usually playing Dexter Drake, where magic messes you up. Like there's a price to pay with insanity to cast spells and utilize that magic. And I was always intrigued by that because any other magic system, it seems like in board games or role playing games, is a force of nature that your character or humanity can control. It's almost like a sci-fi tech from the past. Outside of 40K, Dark Heresy and other role-playing games where if you're a psyker, if you're using magic, even if you're sanctioned psyker, not even like a rogue psyker or chaos cultist or sorcerer, it messes you up. Magic is dangerous. So that kind of intrigued me. Role-playing games, no, I haven't. Most of the players around here are straight up D&D because I think it's a younger crowd. So it's really easy to pick up and play a D&D game. I'm excited, and maybe this is a chance to do it. I picked up, let's put it out here, we got Alien the RPG. And this is like, how did I not know about Alien the RPG? I mean, I love AVP, Alien versus Predator. Love the franchise, even the later movies that got just botched and butchered. Prometheus, a lot of mythology in there. I love that universe. So the chance to play a proper role-playing game, how did I not know about that Kickstarter? Was able to pick this up and really intrigued by the rules, by being able to explore it. I love the insanity system behind it. I'm ready to jump in and play that. I've been kind of writing some stuff, so I might host an Alien RPG, just free for all. I don't know, you wake up on some freighter, cryo sleep is done, oxygen's falling, see who can get off the ship. Apps in Imperial Salt. No, I have not run my Alien RPG campaign yet. I mean, I'm my campaign I've been writing. I think it's still a ways out, but certainly running the cinematic play where you run a one-off adventure, I'm ready to do that. So we might do that online. Just a couple of links, make up a character, and we'll go back and forth and play it. I'm intrigued. AI apps. Well, yes and no. I mean, in theory, I'd like to be able to have a board game, whether it's Descent or Imperial Assault, and have all my toys and be able to play them forever, 5, 10, 15 years from now, whatever. As long as the app isn't necessary to play the game, I think that's fine. Descent Second Edition has the app. I've used it. I played it, but I still have the option to play it offline. The Lord of the Rings, what is it, Journeys in Middle Earth? That's all app. Was it Mansions of Madness? All app based, and I understand an app can do a lot more, just in terms of content and navigating it. And maybe there's nothing wrong with a hybrid board game versus analog versus digital, but maybe I'm just too old school, or maybe I'm thinking back. Was it the game Golem or Arcane? Or Golem Arcana, where you had this board and you had physical wargaming pieces that moved and it was app based. It might have been a little bit too ahead of its time. But the apps do eliminate the need for an overlord, GM, bad guy player. I like that option too, and I think it's more elegant than having a card system do it. And it gives you that replayability where if you want to play the game, just using Descent Second Edition as a model, because I love Descent, you could do the Overlord thing if you're feeling it, but if you're not feeling it, you could still do true co-op. So I think it has its place. I just would like to see it as an option as opposed to the only way to play it. So I'm good to hang out for another 10 minutes. If you guys, I don't want to get too late. I tried to balance out like East Coast versus West Coast, and maybe if you were across the pond, although now I think it's probably like 3 or 4 in the morning. I'm guessing most of us are on the East Coast or Midwest. Gaddis, you're out in Chicago, right? Things are okay out there in Chicago? We loved going out there for the Games Workshop Games Day. Going out there every year for those. I mean, it was a lot of fun. Hit up Baltimore, that's closer to where I am, and then just everyone piles in the car and we head out to Chicago. Yeah, I'm Eastern time. I'm up here in New York, so it's I'm gonna try and do a bunch of different times for these, and when we get into playing some games, try to just accommodate things differently because my work schedule, I'm completely remote now, which one could argue I could always have been remote, but we got kind of some legacy management and other things there. So right now it's kind of like, here's your workload, your pile of work. As long as it gets done, it's all good whenever you want to do it, as long as I hit those numbers by the end of the week. So I have a little bit more flexibility. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. This is really uncharted territory, I think, for a lot of us. Well, here's the RPG question. Like, if it's Friday night RPG, do I do the D&D thing? Do I start a campaign and just have it open literally like every session? Here's the character requirements. Just jump right in and play. Do we do the D&D thing, or do we kind of run Alien like cinematic play? Make up your character and jump into that. Yeah, Adepticon. Um, I think they had to. I think I think they had to. I think a lot of these Nova is still open. I think, right? Nova's not till what, August, so that's got to be a tough decision because you've got to reserve rooms, you've got to logistics. I can't even imagine that. So Adepticon having enough notice and some of these other things, I just think it's unfortunate, but like the situation has made it where there is no choice. We just kind of have to cancel it. But I mean, next year maybe. I mean, things will return back to normal-ish or whatever passes for normal wherever we are. I just worry about some of the smaller independent businesses and gaming stores where your profit margin is thin enough, and we've only been shut down maybe a week here in New York. Monday it was like everything shut down. That's it. Restaurants, not even takeout. Essential employees only. Essential businesses only. So I just wonder, from the perspective of a business person, I mean, how long are you going to go? A month, 2 months? I hope soon. Yeah, I want to do Alien. I'm intrigued by it, with how to run it. So we might have to run that. I'll turn the lights down, get the background music going. What intrigued me about the Alien system was this idea of panic. So you can attempt to accomplish a skill by rolling a d6. You have a base number of d6s based on your ability, based on maybe some skills that you have, and you'll need to get 1 6 to accomplish it. So if I'm computer based, I'm trying to access a terminal. Excuse me. Maybe I roll 46. As long as I get 1 6, you activate the terminal. But depending on what's going on, I've actually got the dice here. So you roll the dice. If you get a 6, you got a success. But then, depending on the situation, if you think you're being stalked by the alien or you're running out of oxygen, you roll these counter dice, which, if a 1 comes up, depending on how many ones come up on the d6, which is the face hugger, you get panic, and you look up on this chart where literally you can freeze, you can flip out, you can go berserk. So I think it's done really well, recognizing the fact that you're not like a superhuman space marine. You're just an average person, even if you're a trained colonial marine. How much do you want to push it? Um, how much do you want to push it and push that insanity? I'd run it with the miniatures. I'd run it. I'm thinking about running it where I've got one of the map packs here from the Chariot of the Gods, which has this really nice layout of a starship. And I've certainly got the figures from Aliens versus Predator Hunt Begins painted up, put them up so out on the table so we could play in this way, kind of have that 3D reference, and have you guys just navigate. The cinematic play, though, like everyone does die. So it would literally be like you wake up on this freighter, things are going off, losing oxygen. Who gets off and who makes those decisions, who lives and dies. I think it could be a lot of fun for just a one-shot type thing. Well, I'm going to sign off, and I appreciate you guys just hanging out with me at the last moment here. I think it's really great because I am always appreciative of the feedback, the comments. I mean, I joke around with my buddies, but it's not really a joke. You guys are my secret weapon, because here I am just in my meta in New York, playing games, rolling dice, whatever. And by posting up some of my vlogs and getting that feedback, or even on my blog, you guys send me emails, just getting your perspective of where you're gaming is just stuff that I normally wouldn't think about. I wouldn't, because it's outside of my scope, my personality, or I should say it would take me some time to come to the same conclusion. So I think it's a great way that I've learned and literally cut down on my learning curve. So the whole YouTube thing and blog thing has just enhanced my hobby over the years in ways that I can't even begin to name. And that's even going back years ago when it was Way of Sam Han, and just kind of amazing how things have evolved out for me personally there. Yeah, I'm going to get another live going, and I'm going to do a better job of kind of giving advance notice and posting what the topic will be. But my thought right now is I'm going to try and do maybe like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So Monday might be like just Q&A like we're doing now, although maybe a little bit more elegant. I'll pull out some miniatures. We'll look at some stuff. Just open mic. What do we want to talk about? And Wednesday, I'm thinking put up something like Kingdom Death Monster, or a board game that's got this campaign play, and we'll just leave it set up, and we'll just hang out a couple of hours and play it and make some decisions together and roll some dice. And I'll let you guys make the decisions and take over, so this way I have full deniability. And then maybe Fridays or Saturdays or Sundays, just running some sort of role-playing game. Just free form, have some fun. We'll do our best to keep to the rules. That we might open up to some audio chat. Might do some stuff through Zoom, something to make it a little more dynamic than me reading comments right now. Army Showcase stream, yeah, maybe just pull out some of my 40K models and show some stuff off, but just trying to engage a little bit more and try to push that out there. So I'm open to any great suggestions, whatever we want to do. And I really appreciate you guys coming out on a couple of hours notice, just randomly posting it up there on YouTube. So I'm going to sign off, and be well for your families, and just can't wait for things to get back to normal as quickly as possible, and the best for everybody. Yeah, I'll pull out the Hawk Lords. You'll hold me to that, Jay, right? I'll dig out my Hawk Lords. They're not Emperor's children. They look like it, but I'll pull out the Hawk Lords. I've got some interesting conversions, librarian and chaplain, that I love to run. So I'll make a note here for the Hawk Lords. All right, be safe.